We're putting in a system of berms and swales. The way I always do it is when I mark out my contour line, I always dig on the uphill side of the flag and place the soil on the downhill side of the flag. Now the depth that I'm looking for, about 18 inches deep. Usually I like bucket width and bucket depth. My knee is about at the same level as the grass. I'll typically use a 18-inch bucket for, more like a food forest site where I'm gonna have tighter spacing between my rows. And in a silvopasture site, maybe for cattle, get a 24, 30-inch bucket. But still, usually I'm going about 18 inches deep. Sometimes people criticize this system for having 90-degree sides, but to me it's the quickest way to do this. It's the least amount of time if you're renting equipment, least amount of fuel. I find over time these sides will collapse a little bit, and eventually you'll get a nice 45-degree angle like they talk about in the permaculture handbook or other text. It's really important that you just look over your shoulder and you pay attention to where you're going and make sure you're lining up with the next flag so that you stay on contour. Go really far off from the flags. It can cause a lot of problems. Now, anytime I'm building a berm and swale, I always try to focus more on building a really nice, even raised bed to plant the trees in. I'm not as worried about the exact depth or consistency of my swale, my ditch here. I'm always really more focused on creating an even pattern up here that'll be easy to come back in and rake out the berm and make a nice even planting bed. I always try to fill in any valleys that I have, or any big ridges I have. I try to smooth out and make it kind of flat, and I usually pull the soil downhill so it's a little bit easier on your body. In terms of actually using the excavator, I always kind of relate this to the arm when you're trying to break through a stump or a big rock or something, sandstone. You can just tell it's the biggest cylinder. So that's like the strongest point. Then you have another joint here, and this is kind of the elbow. You have the bucket, which is the wrist, and there's a thumb on it. The big thing to pay attention to is what's your angle of the teeth. When you're digging, if you're ever getting caught up, it's really important that you make sure that the teeth on the bucket are angled in the right direction. If you watch me when I'm controlling the excavator, a lot of times I'm kind of tapping my hand to adjust the angle of those teeth. If I start getting caught up, but if I point, then I can kind of cut through the layers of soil. And then when I'm digging, I always try to do this method where I open up everything. I open up the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder. And then as I dig, I bring it back all the way to the base of the excavator, right by the blade. And then I pivot over a little bit. I get on top of my berm. And as I go out, I shake the bucket so that I evenly distribute the soil. I'm trying to shake the soil a little bit so it comes out in small pieces. Also, when I'm digging, I don't just get a big scoop like that. I'm coming in and I'm just kind of scraping off the top 6-8 inches of soil. My goal is to create small fragments of soil that can easily be raked and worked with later. I'm not trying to get these big basketball sized chunks of clay. You'll get these big balls, and it'll be really difficult to work with later on.